Good evening, good evening, good evening. How beautiful, how beautiful. Let me see. Start out with back to the audience. I love it. Reverend Stephen Rambo, Center for Spiritual Living, Simi Valley. Pronouns he, him. Standing on some native lands. We know that, right? Do you know where your own are in your own? That's good. That's good. So we've got this lovely panel that we're going to do. And as Daryl said, it's the beginning of a conversation. And I just want to tell you right off that if you've got the app, you have the bios. I'm not going to go through that. We have 45 minutes. We don't have a lot of time. I'm going to bring the panel out here. We're going to talk a little bit. We're going to discuss a few things. And we're going to make time for a triune question situation. What does that mean? 3 questions. 3 people. When you get to that opportunity to do that, if you feel, it's one of those things, you'll know you're the one. You will feel it in your hands. Your body will say, I've got to speak. And you will have a lasered question, not a story, not with my grandmother's first cousin, none of that. Straight up question for the panel, 3 of them. And then if there's some time left, we'll have a summation with our panel, and we'll have a longer discussion later. So let me get my eye extenders happening here. Boom. So I'm going to start by bringing out Reverend K.C. Taylor, Senior Minister and co-founder of Spirit Uncensored. K.C., come on out. This is like,
Sit next to you.
yeah. Come on, sit next to me. Reverend Sunshine Michelle Coleman, Spiritual Director, Senior Minister, First Church, Oakland Centers for Spiritual Living. Reverend Ryan Alexander, co-founder, co-director, Soul Evolution Collaborative. And Gabrielle Claiborne, co-founder, CEO of Transformation Journeys Worldwide. Are you ready?
Yes.
They're more ready than I am. All right, so,
Yes.
you know, this, see, they are. One of the things that comes to me is we are the Center of Spiritual Living. We had that question, that statement, that call response. Look how far we have come. What we've been talking about. There were workshops today. We've had speakers talk about this. This is not the first time this subject's been brought up. But what I want to talk about right now is how do we deal with what we're dealing with up here. You see, we only have 43 minutes now, and I'm going to do this really quickly. We know 5 states have outlawed DEI in various forms already, okay? We've got 64 pieces of legislation running through 25 additional states that will ban various forms of DEI. But I have an idea. Notice flipping the letters around. Inclusion, diversity, equity, but for us as a community, accessibility. How do we allow, how do we access and make our communities accessible? So hopefully we can deal with some of that so you can go away from here with some take-homes, right? As opposed to a theoretical discussion about what's happening in the news. We know what's happening in the news, right? Okay, so I'm just going to open it up, and I don't really have an opening question for you. You all were picked for a reason, and I want to hear that reason and what this is about for you. Why are you here? I guess I do have a question. Why are you here? What this is about for you?
I'll go since we're playing the mic game. I have an intersectional identity. I am half black. When I first started as a minister, I would say I'm a half black, half Jewish lesbian, and people would laugh. And the first time I was like, what is so funny about but it was a great, I wanted people to know I'm Jewish because nobody knew that from looking at me, that 50% Ashkenazi. I now identify as gender nonconforming, and I'm also a minister in this movement under 50. So the amount of challenges that I have faced in becoming a practitioner, I almost failed my practitioner panel because I had a Grateful t-shirt on, and my t-shirt was considered not appropriate, and I had to quit my job at the Center for Spiritual Living at the center where I worked to really demonstrate my commitment to practitioner class. And that same person, that senior minister, told me that he hired me even though I was black. So I kept having all of these challenges, and even being 35 years old, everybody told me I had to be a young adult minister. I'd never seen young adult ministry, and why does a 35-year-old have to be in charge of young adult ministry? But that's what happened. Next Gen is a ministry that I've taken on because someone needed to shepherd it. So Spirit Uncensored was born out of that. It was the first place I had been where I felt welcome, and it's a place where people are throwing curse words in the middle of prayer, and I was like, yes, this needs to exist. So Spirit Uncensored came out of that, and the things that I do in this movement are just controversial, and I'm so grateful that Reverend David Alexander always has my back in the ministers' listserv every time I do something that gets the ministers fired up. But I've been at the center of controversy in this movement since I began, and I keep doing my thing and working outside the box, and I'm grateful that in 2024, this is the most welcome I've ever felt in the CSL community.
Rev Ryan. Ryan, you got the mic. Go for it.
I know, Reverend Sunshine gave me the mic. She gonna regret it, too. I'm here because...
Hold it up.
Oh, hold it up. Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm here because representation matters. Yes. And I'm here because growing up, I didn't have any spiritual powerhouses or ministers or people in my spiritual community that I could look at and say, yeah, they're like me, and I understand that. And so I'm here because that matters. And if I can be here, then maybe it can open the door for someone to say, there's someone like me, and I belong here. And so for me, that is why I am unabashedly who I am. It took me a long time to get there, but because I want to be that for someone else, because I didn't have that. And so that's why I'm here.
Reverend Sunshine.
They got me back. Stephen got me back. I'm here because, let me date myself unabashedly, I've been in this movement for over 40 years. And let me tell you, last night was amazing. I was speechless. And someone referred to the Santa Rosa ministerial students back in 20 whatever year we graduated, and we did stir up some good trouble, and I was one. We didn't see at the time any people of color in the Science of Mind magazines, no images like that. We didn't see, I remember wanting to come to a convention, and I didn't because there was no people of color on the keynote speakers, and then when they were added, it was in the music category where people of color are usually added. And so that, as someone said, I'm black all the time. I was born and proudly so. So when I don't see, talk about representation, when I don't see myself there and I'm committed to a movement, then what does that say about me? So last night, when I saw on the bill so many people of color, and yes, we're talking about and honoring Black History Month, yes. So I expected that. But so many beautiful people, and then to see the Geechee Gullah Choir and the music that was up here, and wait a minute, and to see them sing traditional cultural songs that are different than our Science of Mind philosophy, and it's still a part of their spiritual culture. And maybe some people left the room, but a whole lot of you didn't. And you were enjoying it just like, it made me so proud. Like where, look at us now. That's like Reverend Derica said, look at us now. So I am here, I'm excited. Now, when Reverend Sonny Cantrell Smith came on board and with her views and what have you, it's like, I will continue to be on the committee that I'm chairing right now for CSL because of some of the ideas that I'm hearing, like sacred activism and like the different things. So I'm excited, and it's taken a long time. It's taken too long, yet we're moving forward. So that's why I'm here and I'm still engaged.
Wonderful. Gabriella.
Good evening. It's great to be back with you all again. For some of y'all, I was in Palm Springs, so it's great to get reacquainted with old friends and make new friends. My pronouns are she, her. And the reason I feel like I'm here is because humanity is not a monolith. There are so many dimensions, there's so many complexities, there's so much texture to who we are as a human family. And while representation is a very important reason to be here, I think another aspect of showing up is being an invitation to someone else who is saying, can I really be who I know myself to be? And that's where representation really comes in, right? If I see myself in a program, if I see myself in the words that someone is speaking, if I see myself just showing up in you, then I know that it's safe for me to lean in. I know that I can be my authentic self without fear or trepidation. And who knows what it's like to feel like you belong? All right. We all have this sense of wanting to belong, right? And the only way we can belong is when we're courageous enough to sit down across the table from one another and get to know one another and say, my lived experiences may be different from yours, but I know, like Reverend Sonny said first night, we are all intrinsically connected, right? So if we are courageous enough to sit down across the table from one another, we might find that, oh my goodness, we have more in common than not. So I am here as a parent, as a grandparent, and I don't want to see anybody doing math in your head. As a speaker, as a TEDx speaker, as a mentor, I show up as a business owner. I show up in many different ways. And when you've heard one of our stories, you've heard one of our stories. There are so many other facets of who we are and how we show up. So I encourage you tonight to lean in with us to this conversation.
Beautiful. Thank you for those openings. As I listen to the stories, what comes to me is that we have been, as I said, talking about this since we got here on Monday. It may put some people, I mean, a lot of people are nodding and going, yes, yes, yes. But there are some people, and I've even had a few, who've come up to me and have had some challenges with what's going on. How do we make this conversation accessible, available, and allow for that space? What do you say when someone brings you, wow, can you believe they're really doing that?
I would say we believe in Centers for Spiritual Living, and our tagline and motto is that we want to make this a world that works for all, and we all know that. And so if you believe that, and if you and engage them in conversation, then the way you start is just by starting. You can think it too hard for too long. Just allow yourself, breathe in, allow yourself to lean in, as I love to say, and ask, be curious. Someone said that today. With curiosity and wonderment, you'll go far. So I think we think too hard about, are we going to do it right? Are we going to say it the right way? And yes, we need to be respectful and what have you, but don't let that stop us from getting engaged in the conversation and taking action.
I would say, yeah, thank you. The other person totally deserved that. I would say that the healing journey takes time. I personally really noticed how prevalent internalized racism was living within me in 2020. And I know I am not the first person in this room to experience that in 2020. And I dove all the way into education. And unfortunately, at that time, CSL didn't have things for me to offer. I was taking classes at the Johnny Coleman Theological Institute. I was taking classes through Agape. And eventually, CSL started to catch up and offer different things. So I was involved in the beauty of living in this virtual societies. We have access to everybody's education. And I wasn't trying to be believe that I'm going to heal internalized racism overnight. But I do the work. I continue to do the work. I continue to be more brave and more courageous and confront the things that make me uncomfortable, apologize, take responsibility for my mistakes, and do the best that I can to create change in my community. I'm going to say real quick that my center, United Life in Oklahoma City, hosts drag shows, all ages drag shows. And we started this in 2021. And at that time, all ages drag shows were not a controversial issue. And in 2022, specifically in Oklahoma and other places, all of a sudden it was. All of a sudden we have to hire security and the center is being vandalized, and it becomes this question of, is this something that we can continue? But we've got new trans people coming into the center, so yes, we have to, and in positions of leadership. And Oklahoma is a place where in Owasso, Oklahoma, I went to their first Pride celebration this summer. The protesters were louder than the Pride celebration, and a non-binary student named Next Benedict was killed in the girls' bathroom, which was not a bathroom they would have chosen, but legislators required that Next use the bathroom that they were assigned to at birth. So the challenges that are happening within the community are happening within our centers, and it's really our responsibility, after we teach oneness, to advocate and stand up and do the hard things and invest in security and education and everything we need to do to create a community that works for everyone, so that we are co-creating a world that works for everyone.
Ryan, I know that what was just talked about is something that came up in our earlier conversations. So you had some really targeted ideas around what people can do at their centers to create that space that you addressed earlier.
Oh, let's see, we got 29 minutes. Okay.
No, okay, use 6 of them.
Oh, there's so many things that we can do. So many things that we can do. And they're little shifts. They're little shifts, kind of going back to what I said earlier, like creating spaces with people in mind. When I have to go to a center and I have to choose which bathroom, simply having gender-neutral bathrooms, wow, that small little action. I can't tell you how stressful that is. Small little shifts in our language, the language we use from the stage, the language that we use in our songs, the language that we use in our curriculum, the language that we use in our curriculum, the classes that we're teaching. I'm sorry, I've got to track that. All that, just small shifts. It's so hard to put into words the impact of those small shifts. And I know it's hard. It's hard because I get in doing how I do things, and I like to do that, and I don't like to change either. But I don't know, it's just so, I'm just reminded of the words of Andrea Gibson. She's a poet, or they're a poet. And they said, I asked the sun what the Big Bang felt like. And the sun said, it hurts to become. It hurts sometimes when we have to change the things that we do, but man, does it catapult us into that becoming. And that's what we're here to do, right? As individuals, as communities. And I think these small shifts, and you know what? We're going to get it wrong, and that's okay. Lean in, ask questions, apologize, ask for grace, ask for forgiveness, ask more questions. And then we can begin to create those spaces of empathy and compassion and belonging. That's my 6-minute answer.
That's a beautiful. You left 2 minutes left. You got 2 minutes left. Good. Don't take them. I
Can
know.
I save them for later?
You can, yes.
Okay. Good.
Gabrielle, your work is global, but you also bring it into communities like ours,
Yes.
like yours. The same kind of question. What are some techniques, some styles, some things that we can feel comfortable going out and doing right away?
Well, I'll start by saying it ain't gonna be comfortable,
Okay.
okay? Can I be vulnerable with y'all?
Please do.
Really?
Yes.
Over here this morning, I was sitting there and there were some gender expansive folks sitting with me. And when Dr. Blackman got up, and what did Dr. Blackman do as an ally? First thing, what did she do? I'm giving you a hint. What did she do? Okay, pronouns, y'all, little thing. Trans people should not have to advocate for our pronouns, okay? Cisgender folks should be helping shoulder the burden of advocating for our existence because pronouns is a matter of us existing. I'm going to share a story with you. Recently, I was speaking and facilitating a panel in Atlanta for this D&I event, and the facilitator or the host of the event met me because he wanted to, talk about the event and talk to me about, what are my thoughts around some of the topics that we should discuss. And so we went to this place to eat in Atlanta, where I'm from, and he sat down with me. We were eating. We got through eating and left. And on the way back, he said, Gabrielle, I had no idea what it was like to walk in your shoes until I broke bread with you. The day of that conference, he got up and shared with the audience and said, I was recently having lunch with Gabrielle, which is one of the facilitators of today's panels. And what I learned is that as an ally, I recognize that Gabrielle, wherever she goes, not because I'm tall, blonde, 6'5", I guess, in heels, not because of that, because people are gawking, they're laughing, they're making jokes at me. He says, I did not realize how many stones were being hurled at you. And he realized that in order for him to be an ally, he had to stand close enough to someone he was wanting to advocate for so he could get the stones thrown at him too. Okay? So I invite you to consider, are you getting hit by the stones of the people that you're standing in the gap for? Okay? If you're not, you might want to say, what do I need to look at about me that I can show up differently? I'll say another thing. I've heard the conversations over the last couple of days around political, okay? And I just got to go there, y'all. Okay? Can I?
You said vulnerable, please.
We were in a workshop earlier today, and we were having this conversation around being political. Can we be political? Now, I want y'all to be clearly understanding when I say political, I'm not suggesting one side or the other. What I'm suggesting and encouraging us to consider is what is coming out of our legislators, okay? Because it's coming out of both sides. Do not be fooled, all right? What is coming out of both sides of our political leaders? I'm going to share a quick stat with you. As of today, the ACLU is tracking over 437 pieces of anti-LGBTQ plus legislation, okay? So we have no option but to be political. Not because we're making it political, but because other people are making it political for us to merely exist, okay? And if you struggle with being political, okay, I want to encourage you to say, what is it about that is really bringing and triggering this to come up in me? I call that spiritual heresy. And you say, Gabrielle, that's redundant. Well, we ain't got no other choice than to be redundant right now, okay? Because things are dire. You just heard from Reverend Casey that a 16-year-old non-binary kid in Oklahoma was killed in the bathroom last week, okay? And they're not just coming after trans kids, y'all. They're coming after all of us on this stage. You know, Maya Angelou, I know y'all know this, but I love Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou says, if you know better, do better. And I'm going to go a little further because I think Maya, Dr. Angelou, excuse me, was a little implicit in that language. My experience is you cannot go from knowing to doing. There's a step in between, and that step is what you said, becoming. Okay, if you want to advocate for someone, of someone who has a different lived experience than you, and you have to become what they experience in their life. You have to advocate from them from their lens, not from your lens, okay? So it's one thing to know better. It's one thing not to know better and to not do better. It's another thing to know better and not do better.
You can clearly tell we could go on and on, but we're going to open this up to hear from you. And as we do that, I just want to invite you to take a look around. Look around the room. Look at the way we come in. Look at the exits. Go ahead, look behind you. Because sometimes these conversations stir stuff up in our bodies. We hold knowledge within ourselves that our brains try to block from us. So by knowing where we are, orienting ourselves in the space that we're in, we can be more available to that knowledge that is held within us, that historical knowledge, all right? So we do have a mic here, and we just say 3 folks. So if you're feeling that call that we talked about, come on up, and let's hear what you have for us.
I think you scared them off with that
No,
laser question.
I don't think so. No.
This is your chance to lean in, y'all.
I'm not sure if this is, it's really a question, but I keep hearing people talk about people of color. And a few years ago, I introduced the idea that we call people of the global majority. Because the thing is, in the United States, I think it is 2050, we're expected to be a majority minority country. And we are CSL. We have far more centers now around the world than we did when you and I started, Sunshine, right? So it seems to me we need to be embracing them as well. And so if they're in England, or if they're in Africa, or if they're in South America, they're people of the global majority and not just CSL. They're CSL people of the global majority. And the people in this room also are people of the global majority. And the nice thing about it is white people can be included in that. But specifically, we're talking about people who are actually more people of color in the world than white people who didn't even become white until the British decided they were white.
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
All right,
Until
or
that
something like that.
was created.
There's a history lesson in there. I won't go into it. But anyway, so anyway, I would just like us to start thinking in terms of people of the global majority.
That's a really good point. And to that end, there's also the idea of bodies of culture as opposed to bodies of color, because we all know that in this room, we share more culture around what we're talking about, even though we share different colors. And so those kind of concepts do what you were talking about, Ryan, about the languaging and being very careful about the languaging. Petra.
This question was asked of me by a gentleman, a black gentleman who's been a part of our community for 30 years easily. And we started to talk about transgender people, and he was uncomfortable with how to talk about that from the platform. And he asked me privately, I don't understand the pronoun they. Now, I made up my own answer because the truth is I've never asked that question. I made up an answer that made sense to me, but I don't actually know what the answer to that is. So I'd love to hear that addressed.
Love it.
Well, I think the answer to that is as multitudinous as the people who identify. But I can speak for myself. Oh, thank you. How do you put it into words? How do you put it into words? When I go deep within myself, I feel the abundance of gender, the expansiveness of stepping out of the box of the binary, the box that we have created as a society. And so for me, if words can express that, which they very poorly don't, the they, them is the closest that I can get to grasping what that feels like in my body.
Thank you, Ryan.
That's all I can say.
For me, it took me a really long time to embrace they, them pronouns. I had to go to Oklahoma. I had to go to a place where I needed to advocate for non-binary people all the time. And my resistance, Amy Steinberg and I were having this conversation of around the time that I was coming out, there was butch and there was femme. And I never fit into either. And it was an issue, but I just, it was fine, whatever, I deal with it. And when we started having the conversation, like I was at all of the LGBT college conferences, and we were having conversations around non-binary pronouns, though we weren't using the term non-binary at the time. I started the conversation in the late 90s, and I got to witness the conversation. What pronouns are we going to use? There was ze-zer. There was all kinds of things that were in discussion. And for me, because, as I mentioned, the intersectionality of my identity, I was like, I don't want to have the they-them fight too. With all that I have going on, this is not something else I want to add to my plate. And when I moved to Oklahoma, it was something I was already doing. So I got to a point of realizing that it wasn't anything I needed to run from anymore, that I had a responsibility to my non-binary brothers and sisters. And really for me, I work at a homeless shelter specifically designed to meet the needs of LGBT affirming. And so all of my coworkers use they, them pronouns. The majority of the youth that we serve use they, them pronouns. And I'm at a CSL that embraces it. I had found some queer spaces, and so I was suddenly in a world where I knew I didn't have to explain myself in my community. And so the freedom that came along with that has been really beautiful. I've been using they, them pronouns for about a year now. I'm thinking about maybe they, she, because there's some things like, I like my wife to call me wife, because I want that people to know that she's in some version of a same-sex relationship. And I don't know, there's a couple little, I personally, I don't want to be the kind of person that says, you've misgendered me. There are people who feel that way, and I don't want to say that my experience, just because I choose not to say you've misgendered me, doesn't mean that I don't feel that way. I'm so tired of fighting on all kinds of things that this is just something that I say, these are my pronouns. Either you remember them or you don't. If you want to have a conversation with me about it, I'm happy to have it. But I'm not really driving it through just because I'm pushing too many things.
If I can just add, I took the mic only to go back to basics is what I feel. So my colleague here, Reverend Elijah Christopher, and I swapped pulpits from Santa Cruz to Oakland, and we had a great time. And my community loves them, and they use they, them pronouns. And when I came, and I know that, and I use pronouns as well. So because I feel it's so important. And when I came back to my community, though, I heard that it wasn't upheld as, that someone told me, several people, that Reverend Elijah wasn't addressed the way they wanted to be. And so I immediately started saying, we are going to use from the pulpit pronouns. So I introduced that, and we still use them. The reason I took this back and I said the mic and said back to basics is because I had one of my regular announcers who would get up on a Sunday and make an announcement write me a long email saying, I would like to hear from you as to why we are using pronouns now. I've been an announcer for 6 years and we've never had to do that. So I took the time to explain to him from my view why I introduced that and why it's important. And I also said, it's your option. But I told him why I felt it was important to make people feel welcome. And I even cited a part of our vision statement that says, we are a welcoming and inclusive spiritual community. And I said, if we believe that, then this is how we need to at least start in order to open the door and have people feel welcome. And they didn't, listen to this, they didn't use their pronouns when they were up there doing the announcements. But I just saw recently that they've started doing it on their own. Mm-hmm. And so I want to foster a listening environment. I am having people come talk to me. I want to listen you in. I want us to listen in healing so if I can listen to them and explain it to them in a way that I'm not beating them over the head, then he did it on his own, which is a good thing. So it's important, and this is just back to basics.
That's so beautiful. You were talking about spiritual leadership. We call folks senior ministers, spiritual directors, but that's spiritual leadership. And just as we sometimes, at least in our center, we call everybody practitioners. All the people that come to our center are practitioners. Some have licenses. We can all be spiritual leaders. We all know the principles, and we can lead just the way you expressed.
Yeah. What y'all just heard is skin on the bones. Why they, them is important, okay? Thank y'all for sharing all that. And by the way, would you know that Reverend Casey or Reverend Ryan is they, them? Would you? You would not know. So that's why you use your pronouns, okay? Because it gives them permission to say, and I'm they, them. Now, I'm going to give you kind of a theory explanation. And it's easy. The genderbread person. I know some of you have already familiar with the genderbread person. It talks about gender identity and gender expression for gender nonconforming and non-binary, gender expansive folks, gender fluid folks. They neither feel like man or woman, masculine or feminine. They're in between those spectrums, okay? And that's why they use they, them. And guess what? I've heard this in all the trainings that I've done over the last 10 years. I've heard this question. Non-binary people are just confused because they can't make up their mind on their pronouns. Oh, they're not confused. This is their pronouns, okay? They're trying to communicate to you that you're confused, okay? So, work with us.
I gotta call myself out real quick. I said non-binary brothers and sisters. Like what? I caught myself out after the fact. Like what was that? So calling myself out, my non-binary family, and that's what it is. Like we make mistakes. I'm on a stage with some lights on me. My bad.
That's all right. It's learning. It's learning. Please.
May I, before you go, may I say something, please? My name's Linda.
This is my business partner, y'all.
My name's Linda Herzer. My pronouns are she and her. I am a cisgender person. I am Gabrielle's business partner, have been for 9 years now. And we've been saying a lot about why we do this, to be inclusive and all that sort of thing. But because we are people who want to raise our own consciousness, right, and have a new thought, I'm going to tell you why I, as a cisgender person, make it a policy to introduce myself with my pronouns. It's because I need to reprogram my thinking about gender. And one of the easiest, I need to, I do this work, right? We are inclusion training specialists who have a trans and non-binary focus, okay? But the reality is, I've had 60 years of thinking that gender is binary, of thinking that gender is determined by sex. I've got a lot of reprogramming to do. I've got a lot of unconscious stuff. So one of the best ways to bring up into my consciousness that gender is not binary, that gender is not determined by biological sex, is every single time I meet somebody to introduce myself with my pronouns, because that reminds me and that reprograms my own thinking as a cisgender person. So I offer that to all of you. Yes, be great allies, but do your own work and reprogram your own thinking.
Thank you. Wow. Please.
Reverend Christy Hardwick, she, her. And I'm going to use this moment as an example. So that felt to me like a very important thing, but also a microaggression. I had the mic. I was standing here. Okay? And it's okay that it happened, because these things happen. But we speak about it. We talk about it. I work with corporations, for-profit, not-for-profit, and the two errors I see them making that I want to ask us to work toward not making is when we're doing this work, when people get uncomfortable, some of them turn away. They say, we're done with this. We just don't want to do it anymore. Let's find a way to slink out of the room and not have to do this work. So they're doing that in corporations now. They're, ooh, there's an excuse, the Supreme Court, we can stop doing it. The other thing that happens is my colleagues who have different ways of expressing themselves are so tired that they lose the ability to have grace with people who love them. And when I make a mistake, I can get slammed, but I'm actually in it with you. So what I say to us is, my question is, how can we make the space for advocacy and for compassion, but not just compassion for our friends who are LGBTQTIA, compassion for those who are trying to learn how to see us. Thank you.
You just made that space. Thank you. Hear what she had to say.
So if I could jump in here.
We're gonna
Great
stick to
question.
that.
Thank
We're
you for
gonna
that.
stick to that. We're going to stick to the three.
Who likes to be seen and heard? Okay, who's not raising your hand? Because I know you're not.
Right.
Everybody loves to be seen and heard. When we have these difficult conversations, guess what? I am not the only one that needs to feel seen and heard. The person who doesn't understand what I may be saying or how I'm showing up, they need to be seen and heard just as much. Because what's the saying? What does sugar bring? You know, sugar attracts. It's easier to teach with sugar as opposed to with adversarial, approach, right? So making sure when we're having these courageous conversations to not take things personally. Miguel Ruiz, 4 agreements. Not take things personally was one of the agreements, all right? When we're having these conversations, it's important to extend grace and not take things personally and make sure that people on both sides, and I try not to say sides, in both parts of the conversation, that you feel seen and heard, because it's in those moments of uncomfortableness is where the connection and the compassion and the passion around showing up for each other really happens. I'd love to hear y'all's perspective.
That's a hard one, isn't it? Just give me just 2 seconds. I'm almost there. I think sometimes we get...
I'm going to remind you to hold it up so that we can hear you.
I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
Okay.
I got the mic. I think it's important when we have these. It's important when we have.
No, they really can't hear you.
You can't. Okay. I think sometimes when we have these conversations, we get in the weeds of pronouns and words and things like that. And it's more than words. Often I get people will misgender or make a mistake, and oh, it's just so hard. I said, tell me about it. But it really isn't. It really isn't. Because if you're just trying to correct words, yes, it's hard. But when you are looking and seeing the person as they desire to be seen, oh, it is so damn easy. And that is it. We're not talking about learning new words, learning new pronouns, learning new whatever. We are talking about seeing people for who they are. And when we lean in, when we ask questions, when we have empathy, when we have compassion, then we can actually do that really easily. And I think this is a great space for us to begin to model that it is more than words. It is seeing people for who and what they are.
This has been such a perfect lead-in for Sean, for Mr. Jennerite, because he's talking about, what you're talking about is not breaking the lens and being reflecting in the mirror, not doing it to get a reward, a transaction, but to actually be transformed so that we can move into a new pathway of bliss and joy and possibilities. I love that you used the word courageous. I do not like safe space. Don't want to be safe. Let's be brave. Let's be courageous. To stop ourselves in a moment when you go like, did I just, brothers, sisters, gender binary, non-binary, what? You know, to address a microaggression situation and to go, ouch, even though the impact had a different feeling than the intention. Those are the things that we have to go home and begin to do. Be brave, be courageous, and be graceful. We don't talk a lot about grace in the science of mind, but Dr. Holmes does in the undercurrent. You treat until you see demonstration. What is that treating over and over again? That's divine grace, giving the opportunity. Be graceful, be brave, be courageous. Thank you, Gabrielle. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Sunshine. Thank you, KC. Thank you.